You know that feeling when you leave a conversation and something's just gone? Nobody raised their voice. Nothing happened. And you're standing there thinking, why do I feel like I just ran a marathon? Here's the part that's going to surprise you. It has almost nothing to do with what they said. Because if I told you that by the end of this, you'd be able to spot the 3 invisible signals your body reacts to before you're even tired, before the exhaustion even has a name, would you believe me? Stay with me, because this is where it gets strange. Some of the most draining people you know are also the most pleasant, polite, easygoing, nothing to complain about. And that's exactly what makes this so confusing. Picture her. She's sitting across from a coworker at lunch, someone who's smiling, who's saying all the right things, who by every visible measure is being kind. And yet 20 minutes in, she feels like she's been holding her breath the entire time. She can't explain it. There's no incident to point to. No unkind word, just this quiet, creeping depletion, like something is being pulled out of her one polite sentence at a time. And here's the reframe that changes everything. This isn't about that coworker being secretly toxic, and it isn't about her being too sensitive either, which, if you're honest, is probably the story you've told yourself more than once. What if the exhaustion was never about them at all, and never about you being broken, but about something your body was doing the entire time without asking your permission? Because your nervous system doesn't wait for your conscious mind to catch up, it's already reading, already scanning, already working. And that changes who exhausts you, who fuels you, and how much of your energy you're handing away every single day without ever agreeing to it. So let's actually get into it. Here's what the research actually shows. And this is the part most people miss entirely. Your body is built to co-regulate with the people around you. That's not a flaw. It's one of the oldest survival mechanisms we have. Long before language, humans stayed safe by reading each other. Tone, posture, micro-expressions. The tiny gap between what someone says and what their body is actually doing. This is why you can sometimes tell someone is upset before they say a single word. You're not guessing, you're detecting. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, in a good way. When someone's internal state doesn't match what they're presenting, when they say, "I'm fine," while their jaw is tight and their eyes are somewhere else, your nervous system doesn't shrug that off. It treats the mismatch as a low-grade signal of unpredictability. And unpredictability, to a brain built for survival, reads a little bit like danger. Not danger in the dramatic sense, no alarm bells, just enough of a flicker that your system quietly shifts into monitoring mode. Watching, adjusting, bracing, just slightly, for whatever's coming next. And that monitoring costs something. It's not free. It's cognitive load. The mental effort of constantly decoding mixed signals, of holding 2 conflicting realities in your head at once. Their words say one thing, their presence says another. Your brain has to keep both open, keep checking, keep updating. Do that for 20 minutes, and you're tired. Do that for years, with the same person, and you're depleted before you even walk in the room. There's also this thing called emotional contagion, and it's not a metaphor, it's mechanical. Your brain has mirror neurons that respond to other people's emotional states, almost like you're feeling a version of them yourself. Someone tense sits down next to you, and some quiet part of your body tenses too, before you've even registered why. You didn't choose that. It happened underneath your choosing. Think about the last time you sat with someone who was quietly anxious, even if they never said a word about it. Notice how your own breathing changed, how your shoulders crept up, how you found yourself speaking a little faster, a little more carefully, as if you were smoothing a path around something you couldn't even see. That's not you being dramatic. That's contagion, doing exactly what it evolved to do, syncing you to the person next to you so the group could respond to threat together. It's ancient machinery, running in a modern room, with none of the danger it was built for. And for some people, often the ones who grew up needing to read a room accurately just to stay safe, this scanning became automatic a long time ago. That's hypervigilance. Not a diagnosis, not a flaw, a learned survival pattern. One your body built because at some point, reading people correctly actually mattered. It kept you steady. Maybe it kept you safe. The problem isn't that the radar exists. The problem is that nobody ever taught you it needed a boundary too. So here's your first open loop starting to close, and a new one opening right behind it. If this is happening below the level of conscious thought, how do you actually catch it in real time? I'll show you, but first, I want to name the specific patterns because once you can name them, you stop absorbing them on autopilot. Pattern 1. The person whose mood is unreadable. Not moody exactly, just inconsistent in a way you can't predict. Warm one moment, flat the next, and no clear reason why. Being around someone like this puts your nervous system into constant forecasting mode. You're not relaxing into the interaction. You're running a weather model, trying to anticipate the next shift so you're not caught off guard by it. Notice how, around this kind of person, you start choosing your words more carefully than you normally would. You test the temperature before you speak. You watch for the shift instead of just being present. That's exhausting work, and it's invisible, because from the outside it just looks like a conversation. Nobody watching would ever guess how much calculation is happening underneath it. Pattern 2. The person who never states what they need. They don't ask directly. They hint, they sigh, they leave gaps for you to fill. And because your radar works, you fill them. You overfunction, you offer before they ask. You manage their comfort as if it were your job, because somewhere along the way, it started feeling like it was. This is the dynamic where you leave a conversation having said very little, done very little that anyone could point to, and still feel like you just finished a shift. That's because you did. You were translating the whole time, turning a sigh into a task, a silence into an obligation, and translation, even silent translation, takes energy. This is why some people leave you lighter and others leave you depleted, and it has nothing to do with how much they talked, how nice they were, or how long you were together. It's about how much interpreting you had to do on their behalf. Pattern 3, and this is the one that gets people the most. The person whose energy is incongruent, saying, "I'm fine," while everything about them signals otherwise. This is the mismatch we talked about earlier, playing out in real time. Your body catches the gap immediately, even if your mind is still telling you to take their words at face value. So you end up holding two versions of the same person at once, the one they're presenting, and the one your gut is quietly insisting is real, and reconciling those two versions, over and over, is its own kind of labor. And here's the important part. Neither person in this dynamic is the villain. They're not lying to hurt you. They may not even know they're doing it. Maybe incongruence is just how they were taught to survive difficult feelings. Smile through it, say you're fine, keep moving. They're just running signals that don't match, and your nervous system, doing its quiet, invisible labor, is the one picking up the bill. If you just realized which person in your life fits one of these, go ahead and drop it in the comments. Even just one word. You don't have to explain. Just naming it is the first step in not absorbing it blindly anymore. And if this is already landing, tap that like. It's a small thing, but it's how this reaches the next person who needs to hear it too. Now here's where I want to slow down, because this next part isn't really about them anymore. It's about you. Somewhere along the way, you probably built a story about what all this depletion means. Maybe it sounds like, "I'm just too sensitive," or "I need to toughen up," or the quieter, more painful one, "Something is wrong with how I handle people." And I want you to notice something. That belief didn't come from evidence. It came from confusion. You felt something real, couldn't explain it, and in the absence of an explanation, you turned it against yourself. That's what people do when a pattern has no name. They blame the only variable they can control, which is themselves. But look at what we've actually walked through. Your body picks up mismatches other people miss entirely. It notices tension before words confirm it. It runs a kind of social forecasting most people don't even know is happening. That's not a malfunction. That's precision. You are not too sensitive, too much, or bad at relationships. You are a person whose radar works, and it has been working this whole time, mostly without thanks, mostly without rest. And here's what tends to happen to people with a radar like this. Because you notice more, you assume you're responsible for more. If you can sense someone's discomfort, some part of you concludes it must be yours to fix. If you can predict a shift in someone's mood, you start managing your own behavior to prevent it before it happens. None of that is weakness. It's actually a kind of skill turned inward on itself. Competence with no boundary around it, running on every person you meet, whether the situation calls for it or not. Here's the identity shift, and I want you to actually sit with this one, because it changes the behavior underneath everything. If you believe you're too sensitive, your instinct is to shrink, apologize for needing space, override your own read, override your own instincts, and push through. That belief is exactly why over-explaining happens, why over-accommodating happens, why you stay in draining dynamics long after your body has already told you the truth about them. The belief comes first, the behavior follows it. But if instead you understand this as attunement, a real, functioning skill your body developed, sometimes because it had to, the question changes completely. It's no longer, what's wrong with me that I feel this? It becomes, what does this radar actually need in order to work for me instead of against me? And that's a completely different place to stand. Because radars can be calibrated, they can be protected, they can be pointed on purpose instead of running wide open at every single person you encounter, all day, every day, without your consent. That might look like noticing the mismatch and naming it internally instead of automatically trying to fix it. Just, I'm noticing a gap here, and it's not mine to close. It might look like letting a hint stay a hint instead of instantly translating it into an obligation. It might look like leaving a conversation and asking yourself, honestly, what did I just carry that wasn't mine to begin with? It can be as small as pausing before you offer to help with something nobody actually asked you to help with, as small as letting a silence sit in the room instead of rushing to fill it, just to see what happens when you don't. Small moments like that don't feel dramatic. They don't feel like boundaries in the way we usually picture them, with confrontation and raised stakes. They feel more like recalibration, a radar being pointed on purpose instead of running wide open by default. None of that requires cutting people off. None of it requires becoming cold or guarded or someone you don't recognize. It requires something much smaller and much harder. Catching the moment your system quietly switches into scanning mode, and choosing, on purpose, whether that scan is actually necessary right now. If you want the next part of this, how to actually build that boundary without shutting people out, without becoming someone who can't let anyone close, that's exactly where we're headed next. Subscribe now so you don't miss it, because this next part is the one that actually changes how you walk into a room. Because here's the truth, underneath everything we just walked through. Energy is not just spent, it's absorbed. Silence is not neutral, and the fact that you feel people this deeply was never the problem you thought it was. You're not broken, you're not too much, you're attuned. And attunement, once it's understood instead of feared, stops being something that drains you and starts being something you finally, actually, get to protect. So if something in this just clicked, if you already know exactly who came to mind while I was talking, say it in the comments. If this changed how you're going to walk into that conversation next time, hit like so I know it landed. Subscribe if you want to go further into this with me. And if you know someone who needs to hear this exact thing today, send it their way, because we're just getting started.